Thank you. I'd ask unanimous consent that a commission study looked at the same MRI records done by Bert W. O'Malley, MD, professor and chair of molecular and cellular biology at Baylor University, be admitted into the record.
Was this given to you by Mr. Clemens?
It was. They had this done.
Without objection, the request will be...
I mean, practically, I think asking Mr. Clemens to answer a medical technical question like this isn't fair on a report he's never seen before. This was just made available to our side this morning.
As a record, Mr. Congressman.
Gentlemen, Virginia's recognized.
And I'd also note that Alan Gross, who was the doctor who ordered the MRI and actually is the only doctor here who viewed Mr. Clemens' injury himself, gave a deposition to the committee that will be released this afternoon under oath, and he came to a much different conclusion. He didn't even see an abscess at that point. The only reason he ordered an MRI is because this was Roger Clemens. This was the franchise, and if you see a bruise on your star player, you're going to go get an MRI, and you're not taking any chances. And there was zero evidence at that point, or even suspicion, that drugs or anything had caused this, and that deposition, I said, will be released this afternoon. So, listen, I will just say this was literally a new definition of lynching with the last question that came in asking Mr. Clemens a technical medical question like this on a report that he had never had the opportunity to see before. He's not a doctor.
Well, evidently his lawyers were able to get a report for you to give for the record on that issue, so you're not completely taken by surprise.
That was an exhibit that they've had before this committee for Mr. Waxman for weeks.
Mr. Chairman, out of respect, I believe the committee got the report also.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They've had
sure
it.
I've given.
This has been part of your submissions. That's nothing. There's no surprises here. You didn't give this to us special. We just pulled it out of the records. Because I don't think this really tells anybody. None of these doctors physically looked at you. They're looking at an MRI and taking a different view. And I'm just saying the doctor who looked at this originally came to a much different conclusion. People can judge whatever they want, but I think what's fair is fair on this. Mr. McNamee, let me just return to you since the other side seems to be focused on Mr. Clemens. At your deposition, you testified that one of your alleged injections of Winstrol went wrong. Is that correct?
I'm not saying one of them. I'm just relating that possibly that I did it too fast, that it could relate to this abscess.
Yeah, you did.
Not which one, I'm not sure.
I think it was the one in the Tampa Bay clubhouse. Does that ring a bell?
I know I mentioned that, but I didn't know when that trip took place.
Well, I'm just trying to get into this abscess question. Okay, yes. That's not as important. Now, when you said that when you inject Winstrol too quickly, one of the risks is having an abscess form. Is that correct?
That's what I believe.
Okay. And you said that you thought that Mr. Clemens developed an abscess?
I was told by the head trainer that he developed an abscess.
You said that head trainer Tommy Craig told you that?
Yes, sir.
You said Clemens came to you around this time and said something along the lines of, get rid of this stuff. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. A little bit after his treatment for the abscess, he had come to me and said that.
And you interpret to get rid of this stuff meaning he did not want to use Winstrol?
He threw it in my locker, and he said, get rid of this stuff. So, yes.
You said there was a good portion left of the season when he stopped using Winstrol.
That was my recollection.
Now, if you go back and look at the Blue Jays' schedule for 1998, the team was in Tampa, where, in your testimony, you noted that it was Tampa. The testimony will be released today. The team was in Tampa in the middle of June and toward the end of September. As you testified, this botched injection supposedly occurred at the end of July or the beginning of August. Can you reconcile this at this point as you look back on the schedule?
Sir, the botched injection is just something that I felt bad about that I might have done. I'm not exactly sure it was a botched injection. That's what I had told the people, but my recollection is...
Your deposition said this happened in the Tampa clubhouse, and I'm just saying the only times they were in Tampa were in the middle of June and the end of September. And as you testified before us, it was at the end of July or the beginning of August. And I'm just saying, could your memory be faulty on this?
Very much so.
Another problem is that head trainer Tommy Craig recalls nothing about any abscess in our conversations with him. Isn't it unusual that Tommy Craig would fail to recollect an injury like this to the star pitcher at the time?
Tommy Craig was a trainer for a very long time, and we're talking about 10 years ago. So I'm sure.
Which you seem to have a very vivid memory of, and no one else seems to.
That's why I told in my deposition I felt bad because I had assumed it was my fault.
If Craig treated an injury to Clemens' buttocks, wouldn't that be something he would recall? This was the start.
You'd have to ask Tommy Craig.
Now, he wasn't the only member of the medical team that failed to recall the injury to Mr. Clemens' buttocks. Assistant trainer Scott Shannon, when asked, didn't remember it. Team doctor Ron Taylor didn't remember it. Team orthopedist Alan Gross, who ordered the MRI, didn't remember. In fact, when in his testimony, he came to a much different conclusion than these after-the-fact people who just looked at the MRI. If Roger Clemens, the most famous pitcher in baseball, and really the franchise for the team at that point, at least on their pitching side, had developed an injury known to be the type of injury associated with steroids, wouldn't you expect someone to recollect it along the way?
Well,
except for you. You're the only one who seems to recollect.
None of those people were injecting Roger Clemens with illegal steroids in his butt.
No, and whether you did or not, I think remains an open question. But the question I'm asking is, we're talking here about an injury to him that was a result of that. And they did see an injury and they ordered an MRI as a result of that. But none of the alarms went off. Now, the medical records show that Clemens had some type of injury to his buttocks at the end of July. There's no question about that. But according to the MRI, it was not an abscess. It was simply described as a palpable mass. In layman's terms, this could have simply been a bruise. Are you certain that Tommy Craig told you that Clemens had an abscess?
Yes, I'm certain.
Okay. Both head trainer Tommy Craig and team doctor Ron Taylor told us the MRI was ordered because they thought the bruise or buttocks injury may have been caused by a muscle tear. The MRI was not ordered to look for an abscess. The MRI was ordered because the team's star pitcher was injured. Now that you know Tommy Craig, Scott Shannon, Ron Taylor, Dr. Gross all say no abscess and no memory of this injury, you still stand by your allegation that he had an abscess?
It's not my allegation. He was getting treated for an abscess diagnosed by the head trainer, and he was getting treated with ultrasound, which it was right over the area, the ultrasound was right over the area where I injected Roger Clemens with Winstrol.
Okay. Now, Dr. Taylor says he gave 2 B12 shots in his life, and one was to Roger Clemens in July of 1998, which was the time of the injury and was not in Tampa. The medical records also say Clemens started complaining of soreness in his buttocks after receiving this injection. How can you be so sure this buttocks injury was not the result of the B12 shot, since that is the only shot that could have taken place at that point? The Tampa, where you alleged originally this took place, were going to be in June and September. How do you reconcile that?
I'm not sure I follow your question.
Well, the question is simple. The only time they were in Tampa where you testified this took place was in June and September. This injury took place in July, the MRI, July-August time frame. And we know that he received a shot for B12 during that time. So if there's any kind of shot or abscess, it would have had to be the B12 shot. It couldn't have been the steroid shot you're talking about because they weren't in Tampa at the time.
I know, but you misunderstood the deposition then, because what happened was I assumed, not knowing when the Tampa trip was, I just said because that was a hurried instance where we were in the closet, and that's where the injection took place. But I was unaware of the dates, and my recollection
Yes,
was,
you were unaware of the dates, which is why we have an inconsistency here.
Right, I wasn't aware of the dates.
That's right, you weren't. And now that you are, it makes your statement inconsistent, because this took place in the July-August time frame where they weren't in Tampa. Let me ask you this, Mr. McNamee. Why do you inject professional athletes with substances you knew to be forbidden or illegal as a former police officer?
Well, it was something I shouldn't have done, and I'm ashamed for it, and that's why I'm here today.
Why do you keep doing it?
I believe I haven't since 2002.
But why did you keep doing it for many years?
I just accepted it as the norm, and it was part of the culture in baseball.
How prevalent was it?
Excuse me? Excuse me?
How prevalent was this in clubhouses across baseball at the time?
I think within the players it was pretty prevalent, and I'm not sure about other strength coaches and their involvement.